This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good night, Caroline Lambert. How are you doing on this wonderful, beautiful night?
I am very well, and how are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for asking. Thank you for asking. What part of the world are you in right now?
I am now sitting in Washington, D.C., which is home at the moment.
All right. And which of your talents is responsible for us connecting at this specific time in history?
Well, I am a writer who helps others write their life story.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
It is.
Sounds like a ton of work.
Well, it doesn't feel like work.
Which means you love what you're doing.
Yeah, it feels more like a calling, really.
Ooh, who did you learn the ability to write for others from?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of doing it by myself, but my background is in journalism. And so in terms of, which taught me a lot about what I do today, because, well, first it taught me about writing, and that I learned a lot from other journalists and also from reading a lot and reading great writers. And so I learned a lot about writing from reading others. And it also taught me about listening and asking the right questions. And those are things that are very, very essential in what I do today.
Yeah, it seems as though you are an active listener. When I ventured onto your website, even the images that you shared showed listening, and you were writing, but it looked as though in one particular image you were listening so intently that you were taking notes from the individual that was speaking. Who did you learn the ability to listen from?
I'm actually not sure. I think I'm just really curious about people's life journeys. And so it feels like such a privilege to be able to listen to them and to listen to what they're telling me and to listen to what they're not telling me as well.
Ooh. Now, what's the best way for someone that's listening, pun intended, to connect with you, to share their stories, or for you to communicate their stories for them?
Well, the best way is to come to my website, to visit my website, which is www.carolinelambert.com. And then they'll be able to connect with me that way. Sure. And then I'm also available on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'm
trying to figure out your accents. It seems as though it's a combination of a few things.
Okay, so tell me, what do you hear?
I'm here, I think it's South African a bit. A bit of Australia somewhere in there. English. And it's challenge. Well, the US is there because you're there now. But yeah, that's my pick so far.
Ah, that's very interesting because I lived in England, I lived in South Africa, and I now live in the US, which is probably what you're hearing. But I'm actually French.
Oh, yes, it's the French. It's the French I'm hearing the most. Yes. That's it.
Now it's all coming together.
Yes, no, it's all coming together for me on my side. Well, that's great. So, I mean, what took you to so many places in the world?
Curiosity. I think initially love of language and curiosity about other places, other cultures. And so a little bit of studying, a little bit of work, and then just life in general, opportunities, which meant I was able to move countries quite a lot.
Tell me about an award or even a certificate of appreciation you've gotten from doing what you do.
So I've been very lucky to earn several awards as a journalist. I, especially when I was writing about Africa, I won several awards for my articles.
All right.
And for my writing.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, tell me one other thing that you've done consistently over the last 3 years, please.
So over more than the last 3 years, actually, one thing I do consistently is journaling. And I found it incredibly helpful, not only it helps me to clarify my thoughts, and it's also my way to solve problems.
How does it make you feel like when you're doing that?
I find that I feel more purposeful, and it's almost like a photo negative. I feel it when I don't do it. I feel like I'm drifting a lot more. And when I start the day by journaling, I find that my day usually goes a lot better. I set myself an intention or several intentions for the day, and I feel like I start on the right foot.
Suggest to someone that's listening why they should consider even thinking of doing that.
Well, besides what I've mentioned, it does for me, which I'm hoping it will do for them as well. The other thing, of course, is that, and that ties back to what I do with my writing and other people, is that it leaves a record of who you are. And then it's something you can go back to if you ever want to write your memoir. Or it's something, that then perhaps someday your children or your grandchildren will find and read and know more about you and your life and your thoughts.
Amazing audience, you're hearing it live from Caroline Lambert. Again, you can connect with her at carolinelambert.com. She is an award-winning writer, speaker, and writing collaborator. Caroline, let's switch gears for a moment. Let me now invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water. Caroline, what's your earliest childhood memory?
I think my earliest childhood memory was being driven to school, my very first year at school. And I think I was about 3 years old.
Why do you think this memory is so clear?
Well, because unfortunately it was not a very happy one. I was so anxious, and I think that's why it's so clear in my mind, because I was in the car with my dad who was driving me to school, and I was so panicked. So it's a bit of a strange memory, but that's the earliest memory I have.
What country were you in at that time?
I was in France. That's where I grew up.
How do you see that memory connecting to who you are today?
I think it's about how you frame your stories. And finding meaning in stories. And that's what I do a lot with people who write their memoirs. And, there are there's so many ways, what happened. I mean, the facts don't change, but there are so many ways you can look at them. And the way you look at them changes your perspective and changing the meaning that you assign to them. And that's very powerful.
And that is beautiful. Well said. How would you reframe that memory? That memory, actually, interestingly, it's really taught me to deal with anxiety.
And at the time, I felt like I was really going to die. So I was so fearful. But now I look back at my 3-year-old self and I'm able to say, well, it's going to be okay. Yeah. Can I add something in the process of reframing now that we're doing this? Can I add something, please? Of course. I love the concept of the value that is occurring where you are being taken to somewhere without the energy that is required to do the traveling. So your father is basically... he's lightening the load then of the process, and he's driving you to this place. And could you imagine if you had to drive as well? I mean, you were at that age, but we're speaking in that space of what is the metaphor. And here you are still being taken, transported then. And that is a beautiful
perspective as well in life, that we are given the opportunity to have our loads lightened. Would you agree?
Yeah, and thank you very much for giving me that perspective, because I hadn't thought of it that way. And so that gives me a fresh perspective. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this.
Sure. If we fast forwarded to when you were 12 years old, what was your favorite song?
So my very favorite song when I was 12 was Africa by Toto, which had just come out at the time. And even now I still love that song, and I realize now how prescient it was and how meaningful it was, because years later, and of course I had no way of knowing that at the time. I was still living in France, but I developed a strong connection with Africa, and I started traveling to the region a lot, and eventually I moved there, and I lived in South Africa for a long time, and I married, my husband is South African. And so, and I have a very strong connection with the region, and so it's really interesting to me that that song, was such a favorite song of mine all these years before.
Yeah. I'll tell you something as well. So, amazing audience, when individuals sign up for this conversation, as of recently, what I do is ask them what is their favorite song at 12. So I can prepare by listening to the song. But what's intriguing is the next guest I have, his song is actually the same thing.
Really? What are the odds?
Exactly. And I'm going really fast when I'm podcasting. I'm like in 12-minute segments, and it's one after the next. But I think it's the first time that I've encountered one person coming right after. And I've done this thousands of times. It is possible it did happen and I didn't realize it. But specifically tonight, the next person coming on, his song is Africa as well, which is
my God,
cool.
That is an incredible coincidence, and I really wonder what that song means to that person.
Well, you definitely get to hear it. The episode after you is going
Excellent.
to be
I'm definitely going to listen to find out.
Yeah, sounds like fun. All right, well, we've arrived at our destination. But before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form. So it's yes or no. We're going to move pretty quickly here. Are you ready, Caroline?
I'm ready.
Caroline, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Yes. Well, I pass on my skills to many people. I coach people to write their books. So in a way, that's a way to pass on my skills
Now you
to every person I work with. And I also write a story with my 8-year-old daughter.
No, you broke up for a bit there. Your internet connection just broke up for a bit. And you need to get some water. So you should get some water and get closer to that internet connection. We could edit this out, so you're good.
Okay, let me drink something. Sorry,
Sure.
I'm just coming out of a flu.
It's okay. Come on.
Hopefully that will tie me over to the rest for the rest of our conversation. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. There are worse things in the world. Someone just died.
Oh my God. All right. So where did I lose you?
So for this particular segment, we'll go really quickly. So the question was, I asked, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to? Yeah. So are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Yes. I pass on my skills to almost everyone I work with, because I coach people to write books. And I doctor their books, and so it's a way to pass on my skills. And also I write stories with my daughter, who's 8.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you're married. You have one daughter, or do you have other children?
No, I have one daughter.
All right. Do you believe in God?
I don't like to call it God. But so I think, what I believe in is closer to, the Force from Star Wars.
All right. Do you have an inner circle of friends?
Yes,
Do you watch
absolutely.
Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
No,
How about
Not
3
more
hours
than
a
3
week?
hours. I watch TV every day because I love stories, and that's a way for me to experience stories in a different form other than writing, but not for more than 3 hours a day.
And what about screen time, the phone and the computer? Is it more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
Probably just about that, because my work involves sitting in front of my computer a lot.
And what about reading? How often do you read?
Every day.
All right, Caroline, if you had to share with us your own unique real statement, a statement that represents who you are, Caroline Lambert, what would you say that is?
I would say that everyone has a story to tell, and I can't wait to hear yours.
Love it. I love that. All right. Well, again, Caroline, this has been such a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
Thank you very much for having me on your show. And if anyone is ready to share their story and feel that they need a little bit of help, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you.
Love it. CL Caroline Lambert, thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
Thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, a pleasure I treasure.
This segment has been brought to you by Amazel Enterprise.